Hey everyone, this is Justin, and welcome to the Genesis Astronomy Podcast. This show focuses primarily on amateur astronomy topics from a biblical worldview. My hope is to encourage listeners to examine their worldview in light of what the Bible teaches, as well as provide practical tips and resources to help anyone interested in exploring amateur astronomy further. Thanks for tuning in. Hi everyone, welcome to the Genesis Astronomy Podcast, Episode 6. Just a quick update on the podcast. All episodes are now available on YouTube, so go check them out. YouTube channel, Genesis Astronomy Podcast. There may also be some future video content forthcoming, so be sure to keep an eye out for that as well. Okay, so at the time of this recording, we are in early 2022, so what better time to take a look at what's happening this calendar year out there in the heavens. Now, it's a great time to research some of these things and maybe even lay out a calendar for yourself if you'd like to try and catch some of these events. All right, so first off, I want to just say, and I'm probably going to catch some flack for this, but it is what it is. I am not terribly enthusiastic about meteor showers. Some people love them. Granted, I've not really seen one before, but I've seen my fair share of sudden bright meteors while out viewing in sufficiently dark skies, and, they seem like a neat experience maybe, but I'm just not real big on meteor showers by themselves. So I won't talk about them a whole lot here other than maybe a brief mention. So I apologize in advance to those of you who feel they deserve more airtime. At this time, I don't really feel the same. Okay, so there are a lot of different events that happen in the sky over the course of a year. And of course, those events vary from year to year. For example, we don't have bright, impressive comets like Hale-Bopp popping out every single year. In fact, I think this year will mark 25 years since Comet Hale-Bopp grazed our skies. I believe that was 1997. I was a much younger person than I am now. I was in fact a young boy of the age of, I guess I would have been about 8 or so. And I do have memory of witnessing Hale-Bopp in the sky, and that was quite impressive at that time. And I don't know if I thought that was a very regular thing. No, I think I even understood how rare of a thing that was then. But I've not seen anything since. And that's not to say that there haven't been viewable or reasonably bright ones since, but I sure haven't seen anything nearly as impressive and easily visible in the 25 years since then. I don't think there has been anywhere in the world. I think there certainly have been visible comets, but none of them have been really memorable to me. So, additionally, it looks like for the U.S. this year, we will not have any visible solar eclipses, but there will be a pair of total lunar eclipses, one of which may fall at a little bit better time for those of us who still generally like to sleep at night, such as myself. Now, I admit, when I was back in college, timing was not really an issue. I remember spring break, fall break, my roommate and I, we'd go to his parents' house and spend like the entire fall break or spring break there oftentimes in South Alabama, way out far from any big cities, and we had some great viewing conditions. The stars there genuinely looked big and bright, and I remember one of my first times out there looking up, I was like, okay, it's going to take me a minute to kind of navigate for a minute here because I feel like there's a ton of stars that I don't remember seeing before. And it took me a minute to say, oh, there's that constellation. Okay, there's this constellation. Wow, there's so many more stars in that constellation than I realized. They were just a lot fainter. Oh my goodness, there's this fuzzy object over here. What's that? And you start pointing your telescope at it. It's like, oh my goodness, that's a globular cluster. I couldn't see that before with my naked eyes. And so that was a very exciting, incredible experience, especially the first few times. So, and I remember one night we were literally out there, and dawn started to brighten the sky, and we're like, okay, I guess we better go back now, because our viewing window is going away, as opposed to, oh, we're really tired and should probably go to bed. I think we were more concerned with not being able to see things the way that we were all night long. So, quite an experience if you get an opportunity to do that. So additionally, I want to talk about conjunctions. as well as planet oppositions. Both of these events can be very exciting. With conjunctions, you have two or more celestial objects passing close enough to each other from our line of sight that you can capture both in the same telescope view, and these are typically with planets that we're going to talk about here. So this is something that I've never done myself before, and I think it would be really cool to try to do that this year if I can. So that may be kind of one of my goals in observing this year. So I will definitely keep these conjunctions of the planets on my calendar. So there's going to be several opportunities to catch these, so we'll go ahead and lay those out here in just a little bit. By the way, there are some celestial objects that are always this way, not just temporarily. So for example, you have Messier 81 and 82, which are a pair of galaxies near the constellation Ursa Major. They actually just sit off the scoop part of the Big Dipper, not very far. They can be tough to find sometimes, but with a telescope at low power, you can easily get both of these in the same field of view every time. So next we have the planet oppositions, which occur when a planet is at its closest approach to Earth, meaning it is directly opposite the sun in the sky, sort of like the full moon. It's like a full planet though instead. So how is it closest, you ask? Well, as we orbit the sun, and of course the other planets do this as well, some planets move faster in their orbits and some slower. Because we're so much closer to the sun than the planets outside of us, we orbit much faster, and so during each orbit, we overtake each of the outer planets once. At this time of overtaking or passing, we're closer to that planet than any other time of the year. Some years, oppositions are super close though, because planet orbits are not perfectly circular, so sometimes a planet is even closer to us during those times. So I think there was, I don't remember what year it was, but it was recent. It was in the last probably 10 to 15 years where there was a Mars opposition where Mars was closer in its orbit than on average. And so people were able to get some really stunning views just in a basic telescope of Mars. I mean, otherwise, a lot of times in a basic telescope, Mars is just kind of either a red blob or kind of a reddish disk. And sometimes you can kind of see a little bit of the polar ice if you can get a little bit of magnification to it. So, and that can happen with any of the other planets, Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, Neptune. I mean, any of those can be a little bit closer, some oppositions than others, and so can be a little bit more impressive to view. So, of course, we're going to also talk about eclipses, as there will potentially be a couple of good ones this year, lunar eclipses, and I will mention a little bit about meteor showers, of course, as well. In fact, let's start there. Let's start out talking a little bit about those. So typically, these happen periodically throughout the year, and there are multiple different ones. They're named for the constellation that the meteors appear to come from. So kind of the direction, I believe the term is radiant, the direction that the meteors appear to come from that constellation is how they're named. So, for example, the Geminid meteor shower, the meteors appear to come from the direction of the constellation Gemini. So, all right, for 2022 meteor showers, here is what we're looking at. So we've already actually had some in early January called the quadrantids. I've not heard of these before. I mean, I'm not real familiar, admittedly, with meteor showers, but that's one that is unfamiliar to me. I'm honestly not even sure what constellation that comes from. Quadrantids. It's kind of a hard word to pronounce even. So there's those that are very early January, like the 3rd and 4th, I believe, is when they were kind of peaking. Then we have the Perseids, which should be visible in mid-August, about the 12th and 13th. I did read, though, that these will be hindered by the light of the full moon this year, so they may be a little bit underwhelming. So then we have the Orionids, which are expected to peak around October 21st, 22nd time frame. Apparently these actually come from the dust left behind from Halley's Comet. No moon interference on these ones this year, so enjoy. Now in mid-November, about the 18th and 19th, is the Leonids, and one site that I read said that there could be an outburst this year of as many as 200 to 300 meteors per hour at the peak. That's like up to 5 every minute, and maybe to some of you that doesn't seem like a lot, but having been out and observing in dark skies before, apart from peak meteor shower times, I would see maybe that many over the course of several hours. So 4 or 5 every minute, that's a lot. And especially if you're in a dark sky, it will probably look pretty cool. That one, honestly, might even be worth my while to go check out. So I'm going to keep that one in mind, and I may check it out. Finally, the Geminids are expected to peak around December 13th or 14th with a quarter moon that will probably cause a little bit of interference, but definitely not as much as the full moon. All right, now let's move on to the rest of the schedule. We'll talk about conjunctions and oppositions, and we'll go in chronological order here. So Mercury and Saturn are to be in conjunction on March 2nd. So a little before sunrise, low in the east, you may be able to find them. Mercury's often a tough one because it stays so close to the sun all the time. So you really have to kind of wait until it's at what's called longest elongation. So that's kind of its furthest separation in our sky from the sun by apparent measures, of course. And you really have to try to wait for that time to get your best opportunity to view Mercury, and perhaps that will help this situation. So between then March 23rd and April 3rd, we're going to see kind of a 3-planet party, if you will, sort of going on. It's not necessarily a conjunction, but you have Venus, Mars, and Saturn will all be kind of near each other in the sky. So that'll also be in the early morning hours before sunrise. So get up early if you want to catch that. Those are 3 easily naked eye visible objects. You will probably kind of notice that there are 3 relatively bright objects close to each other. And given that, if you want to have your telescope out at that time of day, you could totally capture all 3 pretty easily. So, and then just after this, between April 3rd and April 6th, Mars and Saturn will be in conjunction and visible as well in those early morning hours. So we will have a conjunction of Mars and Saturn right after that kind of grouping there. And so that'll be a neat one to try to catch early mornings if you can. Then we have April 30th and May 1st. Venus and Jupiter will be in conjunction, and then Mars and Jupiter from May 28th to May 30th. Then we'll have a conjunction of Mars and the Moon, actually, on July 21st. Mars and Uranus will follow with a conjunction on August 2nd. Uranus can be a tough one to find since it's really a little bit faint for the naked eye. I'm not sure you can really make it out naked eye unless you're in a really dark place and you have dark adjusted eyes. You might be able to make it out, but I'm not sure it's very easy to distinguish naked eye from other background stars, so it may just look like a star to the naked eye. So on August 2nd, I believe, was Mars and Uranus, the conjunction of those. So you can easily find Mars, though. So this might be a great opportunity to see Uranus in a telescope if you've not been able to before. I think I've managed to capture it like one time. So it's been a while, so I don't remember it that well. Several years ago. I want to say you can pick out a few moons faintly along with Uranus being kind of a faint but sort of light blue disk. Jupiter then does a dance with the moon on August 15th. I don't know that they're quite in conjunction, but I believe they're quite close. So we'll just have to check that one out. That'd be a neat one to capture if you can. 4 days after that, on August 19th, the moon and Mars will both be near the Pleiades, the bright star cluster that has really 7 main bright stars that you can easily see naked eye, and you can tell it's a cluster because they're pretty close together. So those are your conjunctions for this year, for 2022. Here now are the dates for this year's planet oppositions, meaning these will likely be the best viewing times to see these planets. And it's not necessarily exactly on these dates that you have to see them, but kind of on or near these dates, are going to be the best time frame. They're going to be the times when these planets look the largest in your telescope, as opposed to kind of the opposite side of the year, maybe 6 months apart from this or so, and may allow for the best detail, or if you are a astrophotographer, imaging this may really give you better opportunities. Okay, so the planet oppositions go like so. Saturn's opposition is August 14th. Neptune's opposition, September 16th. By the way, I'm going in chronological order here. Jupiter's opposition, September 26th. Uranus, November 9th. And Mars, December 8th. So there are your planet opposition dates for 2022. So now let's talk eclipses. Like I mentioned earlier, there is no solar eclipse visible in the US this year. However, on April 30th, there will be a partial one visible to those of you in the southern portion of South America and Antarctica. I have a feeling not many people will be able to see that one. I don't know how many people will go traveling down there for a partial one, but if they're not far out of the region, I could imagine that some people that are aware of it may do so. Then on October 25th, there will be a partial one visible in some parts of Russia and Western Asia. It looks like Europe and Northeast Africa will also see a small portion of the sun covered, but not very much. As for lunar eclipses, however, we have a pair of total eclipses that should be visible in the US and South America as well. The first one is May 15th and 16th. This one is slated to begin about 9:30 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. This eclipse, this is the one that's going to be a good show for anybody with clear skies, obviously, in the eastern half of the US, really, as well as pretty much anywhere in South America. This is great timing for anyone interested in viewing this, as you won't have to get out of bed at crazy hours to see it. You might have to stay up a little bit late, as totality I don't think it's going to start until about 11:30 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time, but if you're in the central portion of the country, kind of the heartland, Central Time Zone, you're talking 10:30. Mountain Time Zone, you're talking 9:30. Pacific Time, you're talking 8:30, so you'll just probably be getting dark and the moon will be just coming up as it's entering totality, potentially. But, I mean, that's still a pretty good show. You don't have to wait for the most exciting part of the lunar eclipse to happen before it starts. And so even on the East Coast, though, stay up just a little bit late. You don't have to get up super early in the morning or stay up till all hours of the night. Just stay up a little bit late. I mean, if you want to view the whole thing from beginning to end, yeah, you'll be staying up pretty stinking late. But I don't think everybody will do that. So, the other lunar eclipse this year is November 8th, and it will be more that way, where you're going to have to really shift your sleep schedule for that night. And some people are happy to do that and don't have a problem to do that and are excited and passionate enough about this to do that. And so, awesome. Enjoy that one. Enjoy both of these. Most of it's going to be visible in the Eastern Time Zone, this one that's on November 8th, but it doesn't start until 3 a.m. Eastern Time, with totality starting a little after 5 a.m. So those of you who are getting up for work or getting up or just, get up early, you can probably catch it. You can probably, if you wake up at 6 a.m., it's going to be in totality when you wake up. So you can probably still catch at least a portion of this one. So I myself am a bit partial to solar eclipses, and I think this is because I've had so few opportunities to see any in my lifetime. Really, the only one I can recall observing at all was the one back in 2017 when I lived in Utah. We weren't quite in the path of totality, but the sun at maximum was around 91% covered and was still a neat thing to see. Even with that, it was noticeably darker than when the sun is uncovered. Oh, and one other thing to keep in mind when viewing solar eclipses, I'm sure most of you know this, but I'm going to talk about it and talk about viewing them. I'm going to throw this out there as a disclaimer so that nobody who is unaware does this and then comes back and says, why didn't you tell me not to do this? Do not look at the sun. Okay, do not look directly at the sun. It has potential to damage your eyesight. It's still incredibly bright to try and look at, even if it's 80-90% covered. So find yourself some eclipse glasses or cut a hole in a piece of paper. It totally works. I actually did this. I was actually at work during the day when peak eclipse time happened, and so several of us went outside, and I took a piece of paper out there and I either poked a small hole in it or I cut a small hole in it and held it over the sidewalk even, and you could see how much of the sun was covered. I mean, it was all but really a crescent, like sliver almost, of the sun was covered, maybe slightly more than that. But honestly, you couldn't even look at it. Like, I tried to sort of indirectly kind of look upward to see if I could tell that you can't. The sun is literally that bright. Even when it's 90% covered, you cannot tell that the moon is in front of it. Now, if it's 100% covered, you can, but they still say don't look at it, because I think, you're pushing it. So there you have it. That is what 2022 is shaping up like in a nutshell. So I'm looking forward to maybe trying to catch some of these planet conjunctions with my telescope. That's new to me. That's a new thing. That's something I haven't done before. And so, maybe some excitement of that. And honestly, I have my little rig, my little smartphone telescope adapter that I have tried using a little bit and tried photographing a little bit. It's definitely not what I'd like it to be, but I think there's some work to be done there to maybe develop that skill with that tool just a little bit. And maybe if I can catch planet conjunction this year or two, maybe I can at least try to snap a little smartphone picture of that. And, maybe it won't look amazing, but I can at least document that, hey, look, I caught it. So any of this information that I've shared is very easily searchable. So feel free to look up these events for yourself, or see if maybe I missed something that's noteworthy from my list here. And if you do, please let me know. Because if I totally miss something, I want to know. I will add it in, I will comment, I will point out that, oh, hey, forgot about this, or didn't even realize this. This is also something to look out for. So, and if you love meteor showers, by the way, and are annoyed with me that I dog them a little bit, well, please go and enjoy the ones that are coming up this year, especially the one that has a potential outburst. I believe that was the Leonids, if I remember correctly. Go and enjoy them. Don't let my opinion about them decrease your love for meteor showers, okay? Because that's not the point. So, my opinion can't stop you from enjoying those, especially if there's one that's really going to have an outburst like the Leonids. So, all right, thanks everybody for listening to this week's episode. Just so you all know, our next episode is going to be our finale for this first season of the Genesis Astronomy podcast, and then we'll have a short break before season 2 kicks off early in the spring. As a reminder, all episodes of this podcast can be found on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, and now, as I mentioned at the beginning, YouTube. Hopefully you are all keeping warm this winter. Thank you for tuning in. We will see you next time.